This is Chris, Idaho Painter here on Paint Live TV. Today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks using the Expert Lumber Staining Machine. Pretty staining machine to do lumber for decks, fences, pergolas. Absolutely incredible machine. I've used it for a while, quite a bit, and I've come up with some pretty cool tips and tricks that's going to make it less frustrating for you. It's going to work faster, more efficient, and you're not going to damage your rollers or brushes doing it. First tip I'm going to be talking about is setting up your rollers right here properly so they spin freely and stuff so you don't damage them. These are foam rollers and you can damage them, if you don't have this thing set up properly. What I learned is, if you don't have them set up, you could be creating a lot of drag and friction on the roller itself, and the drag and friction is not going to cause them to just roll over smoothly and effortlessly on the wood. And it could actually grab, like right here, it's not, splitting these rollers right here very good. And these are just foam rollers. They house the product, they house the oil-based or latex product you're using. And if they're not spinning as the lumber's going through, you'll actually start to tear these rollers. So these rollers, before you start using it, need to be set up proper, and you don't want it like smashing down on the lumber on the sides or the top and bottom really hard. So I've got a 2x4. It's more set up right now for like a fence picket. So I'm going to adjust this up a little bit. Now it's got kind of like just a 1/2 inch smash on the roller on the top and the bottom. And I got, I got a 1/2 inch smash on this one side. I got more of like an inch smash on that side. Now it's going to roll nice, smoothly. That's how it should roll. It should not very much friction at all. If there's too much drag, once again, you're going to damage these rollers. The rollers are replaceable. You can get replaceable rollers. You can get replaceable brushes also in a kit. You actually can get replaceable valves. But tip number one is make sure these rollers are set so it's effortlessly pushed through and you don't damage your rollers. All right, tip number two that I'm going to be talking about is using your guide bar to get your staining machine set up properly and used properly so you're not making a big mess with your machine and you're not throwing stain everywhere. So I'm going to get this thing set up. This guide bar is kind of it's a support bar, but it's also a guide bar to guide your lumber in so it's splitting the brushes right here, my back brushes, top and bottom. It splits right through those brushes and it's going to back brush the top and bottom evenly. Now, if you're not using the guide bar for some reason as a guide or a support, you could end up taking your lumber, running your lumber in at an angle like this. If I'm running my lumber in at an angle, it's putting a whole lot of pressure on this top roller. And what's going to happen, it's going to, like a sponge, it's going to kind of wring that roller out really fast. It'll wring it out really fast, empty it out, and if you're running like a long 12-foot board, it's going to run out of your stain or paint too quickly, and you might have to adjust your valve so it doesn't run out so fast. But you don't want it to go at an angle. You kind of want to use this bar as a guide to push it through so you're not wringing out this top roller. So just get this bar set up properly so you can get your lumber, your picket coming in straight and not coming in down in an angle. I just recently saw a video somebody using the machine. They're using 12-foot boards. They're sending them in at an angle like this much, and it was smashing the all the stain out of the front roller too fast. And then they were getting towards the end of their run of their siding boards, they were having to back brush them with stain because this thing was already run out. What's going to happen is you're going to have to actually adjust your valves to actually pump out more product if you're improperly doing it. And eventually, at some point in time, it's not going to send out enough product if you're not just sending it in what we call a level horizontal position. So another tip I want to give you when using the Expert Staining Machine is we're sending in our lumber, in a flat level horizontal position. We've got our valve set up so it's loading our rollers across here evenly. Do not try to send your pickets through too fast, and you'll learn like a proper pace and a proper flow right here as the picket comes through, if it's completely saturated from the front to the back and all sides, you got everything running smoothly. Now if you're back brushing that board at the end, you're sending it too fast, sending it through too fast, or your valves aren't open, wide enough. If your valves are open all the way, your reservoir is completely full here, spilling out, you're still having to back brush it, then you need to just slow down your pace of running your pickets through. I typically have my valves open halfway, and then I'm sending a picket through probably about, this pace. I'm probably just running it through this pace. I'm watching it, and I'm just watching this picket go through every single time. If I see that it's dry on the back, it's got to be back brushed, next time I'm just going to slow it down a little bit. So you can't just not pay attention and not watch what you're doing. So it's going to be sending it through. You're going to be watching it, flood, and you should actually see the product itself kind of flood in the front right here, and it kind of like spilling out on that picket. If you don't see it flooding, spilling out, you're going too fast or your valves aren't open wide enough. So the next tip I want to give you is right here is the bucket itself. I actually put a strainer on the top of my bucket right here, so everything that's pouring into this bucket is being strained. You have a strainer on the top right here, but it is pretty wide. Anytime you're using rough sawn lumber, you are going to get like sawdust material into your stain. It's going to be coming down through your petcock valve, and then you need to actually strain that before you dump it into the top. So whatever you do, always have, even if you're doing all the 2x4s for a fence or smooth deck boards, there's still going to be a certain amount of sawdust or wood particles that are going to come loose and stuff. So just have a bucket top strainer right there on your bucket to strain your product. The last tip I want to give you is adjusting and leveling your machine. You'll see like the machine itself, if your hole down here, anything starts to get clogged, or if you're keeping it, the petcock closed and then opening it, one thing is you should have your machine itself level and stuff. So I don't break out a level to level it, but I just eyeball it. The feet themselves, the legs, they slide up and down and they are adjustable. There is just a wing nut right here where you can adjust your feet. So if you're sitting on unlevel ground and it's up too high on one side, you can lower it, raise it on the other side. Just make sure your machine is level. All right, I got another tip that I want to show you. It's with these rollers right here. So the rollers on the outside, I'm going to show you a little trick, and this was an issue I ran into, the roller not spinning freely and causing a lot of drag when the picket or the lumber was going through, and it was actually tearing up the roller itself, the foam roller, and that is how this thing is actually attached. So you got a pin, a center pin that goes through, and then this thing, the foam roller, is on a sleeve right here, right there, just like that. So it slides on this sleeve. It's going to go down. This is what holds it in place. In order for this thing to spin freely inside the sleeve and have your foam roller spin freely, the keepers that are attached to this sleeve have to have a certain portion exposed right here. So I got about 1/4 of an inch exposed. Now, if it wasn't exposed and the keeper was sitting down there and the sleeve was actually inside, when you slide this on, the sleeve is going to be riding on the end of your pin right here. It's going to cause drag and friction, and what I noticed is it doesn't spin as freely because of the drag on that keeper right there. So I want to make sure this thing is sitting up about 1/4 of an inch. Now there's going to be less drag sitting on the end of that right there, and it's going to spin a lot freer, and it's going to be a lot easier, and you're not going to damage your roller.